what's up? John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com. So I just realized I have not really done a financial video in a while, and a lot of you like my financial videos. If you're curious on some of my financial stuff and what I've talked about in the past, you can of course check out in my soft skills book. I do have a whole section on real estate investment and everything as well. And if you're interested in real estate investment specifically for software developers, I do have a course that I have created on this, and you can check that out here. It's not cheap, but you know, it's got some of my best advice that I can't really pack into one little video here. So let's talk about liquid and safe investments today. So I got this email. It says, "Hi John, I was pondering if there was a better vehicle for my rainy day fund that I have set aside. I've about 1.5 or a half a year to a year's worth of expenses as in an online savings account that's yielding near 1%. The whole point of this account is for emergencies, so it needs to be relatively fluid. Is there anything safer than this that I should be looking into that isn't locking my money up for a specific, for a set period of time? Could a staggered CDs of 1/4 of the value be done that would optimize this, assuming that I have enough money in the online account to last till the expiration date hit? Thanks. If you feel like making a video on this, feel free." So I'll read you what I actually responded to this, and then I'll decompose this a little bit for you here on the video format. So I said there are definitely a few options. It really depends on your situation and how liquid your other investments are or not. I have used a HELOC on one of my properties that was very low interest rate. I could tap into that if the shit hit the fan. I carry a large amount of cash now. I think some cash is always going to be essential, especially if you have potentially big unexpected expenses like I do. I also have an old 401k account that I don't contribute to, but I'd be willing to dissolve if I hit an emergency situation. But in general, you won't find a high yield, high liquid, low risk investment. One sort of riskier option is fairly liquid and high yield is buying a solid blue chip dividend paying stock and selling covered calls against it every month while collecting dividends. You can always liquidate your position if needed, and since it's a blue chip with dividends, it's going to be fairly stable as far as stocks go. So I think that pretty much summarizes my advice. It's succinct when I type it out in an email instead of a 10-minute video, which now I'll make it into a 10-minute. No, I'll try to keep it fairly short because that pretty much summarizes my advice. So you're going to find, I mean, if you're getting something that's getting 1% yield, by the way, you're losing money because inflation, right? And you're going to, not only that, you're paying taxes on that 1% you're making, and then you're actually losing money for inflation. It is important, though, to have expenses. I mean, this guy who sent me this email, very smart, first of all, right? He's got expenses saved up, a half a year to a year worth of living expenses. That's awesome. Most people don't have that. That's what's his name? Nicholas Taleb calls "fuck you" money. It basically means that you can tell your boss "fuck you" because you've got 6 months of expenses or a year worth of expenses. It means you can't be put in what I call a squeeze situation. You can check out my video on being in a squeeze. I finally found this video and retitled it to Squeeze so that it could be referenced, because I kept on referring to it and it was hard to find. But it's called a squeeze situation. You can check out that video. But it prevents you from getting into that situation because you've got a backup. You've got options. You're not stuck in a position where you have to compromise your integrity, your values, whatever, or you get the chain reaction of shit that happens, which is when you can't make your car payment, so you can't get to work, so you lose your job, so your wife divorces you, so you end up, you know, whatever happens and blah, 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 and your whole life is a mess, all because of one stupid thing that you didn't have. If you had $500, you would have saved yourself from being a homeless person living on the street, right? It was that little chain reaction that set everything off. So having those expenses is really important. Now, what you do with them, they have to be somewhat liquid. That's why I recommended, like, if you can get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit on your house, and you don't touch that thing, but that can work as an emergency rainy day fund. You have to be disciplined with this. It's not something I recommend for everyone, but I don't like to have cash sitting idle that I'm not utilizing in some way, especially if it's a large amount, because it's kind of wasteful. That's why things like, if you have a 401k, you know, I'm not a big fan. You can check out what I had to say about retirement and 401ks. I'm not a big fan. Just like Grant Cardone. I love that. I didn't even know that. And I watched one of his videos and he's like, 401ks are for suckers. First person that agrees with me on this. Dang. Grant Cardone is the man. So anyway, my point is this, is like, you got to have some kind of liquidity so that when the shit hits the fan, you're okay. And that can be, credit card is not a good option. A home equity line of credit could be one. You could also utilize, like I said, a 401k that you could either withdraw or borrow against, or, you know, if the shit hits the fan, you're willing to pay the penalties. If you've already invested into that, I've got a few different kind of things that I could do if I need to. Plus, I keep a reserve of cash as well. And the more that you have that can go wrong, you kind of got to figure out what your cash reserve is, because it's not just expenses. Like if you invest in real estate, like I do, if a whole bunch of stuff goes wrong, you need to be able to cover that quickly. So however far you have your ass hanging out the window, that's how much cash you need to have to cover your ass. Does that make sense? So if you've got a really expensive car, or you've got, you know, things that could break down that could cost you money, if you run a business and you've got some expensive equipment like a printing press or a shirt press, I don't know what, you know, whatever you have, or your computer. Oh, just there was a guy on the Simple Programmer Facebook, his Mac, he spilled coffee on it, and it was an expensive thing, and he didn't have the money to replace it. So that was right, and that hurt his freelancing business. So stuff like that, you got to have some cash reserve to be able to cover that kind of stuff. Now, that final advice that I gave about the blue chip stocks, this is something I've done in the past. Again, you might want to research this before doing this, but I have in the past. Again, you know, this is just my non-professional advice on this, but I have taken some money and I have bought a whole bunch of GE stock, right? And then I have sold covered calls, options, sold options. Some of you are like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's fine. Some of you get this. If not, you can look this up and see what a covered call is. It's basically where you're selling an option to buy that stock. You're selling it to people, and it is covered because you have the stock to back that up. So if someone executes that option, if the price goes up, and you're selling that like at 2 months out at a higher strike price, so you're getting a premium, they're paying you money for the option, okay? And while you're holding onto those stocks, you're getting a dividend, because GE is a blue chip stock that pays dividends. So you're sort of getting this, and it's very liquid, right? Because you could liquidate your position very quickly. You could sell, you could buy back the options that you sold, and you could sell your shares. There's a lot of ways that you can unwind that fairly quickly, and the chances of a blue chip stock like GE suddenly tanking are very low. There's still a risk. You could lose everything, right? Anytime you invest money, you could lose everything, but you could put some precautions in place to prevent that. You can put some stop losses in. You could use something else to hedge against that. There's a few different things depending on how secure you want to be, right? If I were to choose what is the best logical option to do with that cash reserve, which I'm not doing right now, by the way, just because I'm paying things down, and I'm not so concerned with micro optimizing sometimes. To me, I want to spend more time focusing on my business and growing Simple Programmer than micro optimizing things and worrying about this stuff. But if I were to pick the micro optimized best strategy that I think that gives you cash reserves that are liquid enough, that gives you the highest yield, it would probably be the blue chip selling covered calls thing. But it requires you to watch the position and to be smart about this and to be kind of cautious here. So that's why I'm not currently doing it. But I have done it in the past, and that's, you know, you need some education to do that. Okay, like I said, in my soft skills book, which you can check out here, I do have a chapter in here that talk about options and gives you the basics of what options are and investing in real estate. I break down how financial currencies work in the world. I know this is kind of crazy for a software development book, but this stuff is important. People don't know this stuff. They don't understand why banks exist and how mortgages work and how the stock market works and what options are, right? And then you try to find this information. You find a ton of scam artists out there, or you find just too much information when you just need to understand the basics of that. I couldn't find the book that did that, so I put that into soft skills because I think it's an important skill to have in life. You know, you got to know. There's some things I did this video on, the things that you need to be a master of in life, and one of them is your own finances, right? You cannot have an expert do that for you. You have to understand it. You can delegate that out once you understand it and have the plan, but you cannot abdicate that part of your life. Otherwise, you're not going to be financially successful if you do. If you like this video, if you want more financial advice, if you want more whatever it is I do here. You want to improve your life, you want to grow with the rest of the simpletons here at Simple Programmer, click that subscribe button below. If you already are part of the tribe, I thank you, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.